How's it going out there, YouTube? I'm gonna drop this video hopefully before I leave for the weekend, but if not, you'll be seeing me on either Monday or Tuesday following the day that I'm recording this, which would be Tuesday of, that'd be the 25th of June. So this isn't going to be a typical video of mine where I either choose an article or several articles and either delve into them or refute the ideas placed inside of that article. Instead, I want to express my opinions and rant, if you will, about the constant state of war that we constantly see ourselves in this modern day and age. Now, before I get to the core of this video, if you will, the main course, let's have ourselves a little appetizer, and I ask my followers that are from the United States, which I'm going to assume a majority of you, I know it's not all, but a majority of you, and those of you that are not in the U.S., feel free to chime in as well, if you please. But I want to ask you, those of you in the U.S., a simple question. How long have we been in a perpetual state of war? Now, keep in mind this doesn't include actual physical boots on the ground in active combat, but in a state of war, how long has that been going on? Since the Bush administration? Some of you would probably say, considering he was in office and almost basically perpetuated the invasion of Iraq, but that's a topic for another time. Anyway, the answer, if you had answered that, you would actually be incorrect. We have been in a state of war since the 90s, the Gulf War. Now, we haven't been in a state of, avid war that whole time for the last 20 some odd years. We'll say it for the sake of argument. We'll say 25 for the sake of argument. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, and quite frankly, I should have looked it up before I started recording this, but in for a penny, in for a pound. Anyway, so we'll say for the sake of argument, 25 years, we'll say 94. But this is baffling in of itself, aside from the fact of all the socioeconomic aspects of it pushed aside, just the fact that we've been in war for this long, and very few seem to want to talk about it. And given that information, we stand at the cusp of what could possibly be either the start of a World War III or the start of another Cold War. Now, for those of you out of the loop or that don't remember or haven't heard about it in history class yet, the Cold War was a period of time between Russia and the United States. Well, it was USSR technically, but the USSR and the United States, where there was constant production of weapons, including, and probably the scariest part of it, this also included nuclear warheads. Now, I forget the exact number of how many active warheads between the United States and the USSR, between us, we had more than enough nukes to devastate the planet. But since then, we have both USSR, well, Russia now, both Russia and the United States have deactivated a large number of these nuclear warheads. And by deactivate, I mean they separated the actual warhead part from the ICBM, the actual part that delivers the payload, which would be the missile, for layman's terms. But the reason why I say you could possibly be on the cusp of this happening again is because of what's going on between Iran and the United States. Now, Iran is producing nuclear weapons. There's no doubt about it at this point. Now, I'm not saying anywhere near, and I'm not suggesting that we fucking invade them like we did with Iraq and look for fucking weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. No, I'm not saying that. I am saying I'm fairly certain, like 99.9% certain, that they are, in fact, developing nuclear weapons. However, they also have the backing of Russia, whereas we, the United States, we shadily back the Saudis. Now, Saudi Arabia and Iran don't get along. Surprise, surprise, most countries in that area tend not to get along very well, but that's besides the point. Now, I say this shadily because, well, A, there's a lot of things that go on in Saudi Arabia that majority of people in the United States, and there are very, very few that would disagree with this, but a majority of people in the United States would find these things abhorrent. You know, execution of gays, the suppression of women, things like that. Things that would be considered human rights violations here in most of your Western world, if not all of your Western world. However, they also buy weapons from us, and we buy oil from them, which I might get into that later. But we buy weapons, we sell weapons to them, we buy oil, we sell weapons to them, we buy oil from them. Now, this just happened not that long ago where we had I think it was like $5 billion or $7 billion deal or something of that effect. $1 billion arms deal go through with Saudi Arabia not too long before the incident in the Gulf of Oman happened. Or Oman, I don't know how, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. But anyway, those tankers that got hit, those Japanese tankers that got hit, and that whole uproar about it. The thing that I find the strangest about that whole scenario is within 24 hours, the United States had already pinpointed exactly who did it and was already pointing the finger across the table. Now, when that didn't seem to catch us on the hook, they started complaining about the drone strike the drone that was shot down. The drone that was shot down that happened to be in Iranian airspace, mind you. So yeah, they shot down our fucking drone that was invading their airspace. Like, it's not something that we should. I say we, I mean the Secretary of Defense and the members of the military shouldn't be stomping their feet and throwing a tantrum about because we invaded their airspace, not the other way around. However, many see this, and bear in mind, take this with a pinch of salt. This is not proven. Far from it. This is just speculation. Many see this as an indication that the United States, obviously speaking as a colloquial term here, is looking for a reason to engage with Iran in a more direct fashion rather than simply sanctions, which, quite frankly, is a topic for another time. But that being said, like I said before, Iran has the backing of Russia. And let's be honest here, Putin and Trump, whether or not you believe in the collusion or not, at this point, if you do believe in the collusion, I can't help you on that one. It's obviously bullshit. But even if it is true, keep in mind, other countries colluded with the Democratic National Party, National Convention, the DNC, and the RNC, and specific members of both of those parties. You can't pick and choose which one you get upset about. And quite frankly, the whole hoopla involving Russia being involved with our election just reminds me of the Red Scare back in the 50s anyway. But this also goes hand in hand with what I was talking about with the reoccurrence of a Cold War. Because I find it highly unlikely that Russia and the United States will ever directly go to war with each other. Much like what the United States and communist countries were doing with the Korean War and the Vietnam War, we're using separate countries as proxy agents to fight our own battles. I don't agree with it, but that is indeed what happened. Now, I don't agree with war, especially in this sense, because it's not the person that's pointing the fingers, or excuse me, not person, the people. It's not the people that are pointing the fingers that are asking for war that handle the firearm and go to the war themselves and actually fight the war. It's somebody else that does the fighting for them. Once again, though, that is a topic for that is a subject for another time. The reality of the situation is, if indeed if with every incurring, because I guarantee this is going to happen again, with every reoccurring example that the United States immediately tries to pinpoint Iran as being the perpetrator for, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that they're going to be wrong all the time. There's a good chance that they're probably going to be right at least once. I mean, a broken clock is right at least twice a day after all. But take everything that they say with a grain of salt, because the last thing we need to do is enter into another Cold War where we constantly vamp up our fucking arms and weaponry and nuclear devices to possibly never fight a war that's never going to happen, which also, by the way, incurs government spending, which increases the debt that we owe, which increases government power and everything else that goes along with it. Unfortunately, people as a whole tend to buy into these things relatively easily because, well, quite frankly, people tend to believe what they are told rather than actually be like, I saw that on the news, but you know what? I'm going to double check that. It doesn't sound right. People tend not to do that. They take it at face value, move on with their lives. Now, with Saudi Arabia and Iran being at each other's throats, and essentially the United States being on Team Saudi and Russia being on Team Iran, it does seem an awful lot similar to what happened in those other two Asian countries that I mentioned before. So from here on out, just don't give in to the propaganda machine, because we are going to be fed quite a bit of it over the next decade or so. I almost guarantee you, even if it lasts that long, which I highly doubt it will. But just maintain a semblance of skepticism. I really do not like that word for a different reason than what it actually entails, but that's besides the point. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. I promise next week I will actually do a proper video on just A, I needed to say, I had this on my mind, I had to say it, and B, I'm not going to be around for the next like 5 days, and I'm not going to be at a place that has internet, so this is what you're going to get. Sorry. Anyway, for all of you out there, keep a skeptical mind, take it easy, and I will see you cunts in the next one.